All right, so have you ever wondered, like, why don't guys pursue women like they used to?
Yeah, it's a question I hear all the time.
Like back in the day, you know, a guy would pick up the phone and actually ask you out on a date.
Right, not just like sliding into your DMs or whatever.
Exactly. So we're going to do a deep dive into this whole mystery.
Sounds good.
We've got two really cool sources.
Yep.
One is this Christian article that kind of gives us a glimpse into the male psyche.
Interesting.
And then we've got this YouTube interview with a relationship expert who's got some pretty wild theories.
I'm intrigued.
This is going to be juicy.
Yeah, well, let's jump in then.
Okay, so the article's called Why Guys Don't Pursue, and they have these fictional Mr. characters.
Okay.
Like each one represents a different type of guy and their reasons for holding back.
Oh, that's a cool approach.
It is. Yeah, it's like we're getting a sneak peek into like a secret society of male anxieties.
I like it.
Yeah, so the first guy we meet is Mr. Fear of Rejection. He's basically terrified of getting shot down and like having everybody know about it.
Oh, yeah, that's rough.
Imagine like the gossip spreading like wildfire.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not just a bruised ego. It's like a social nightmare.
Especially for guys.
Right.
But for guys, rejection can feel like a total blow to their masculinity.
Yeah, especially if they're in a competitive environment.
Exactly, where there's all this posturing going on.
It makes you wonder if it's partly about like the pressure to make the first move.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like it's some kind of test of their manhood.
Like those middle school dances all over again.
Totally. Like the girls are all lined up waiting for the guys to come ask to dance.
And those gender roles get ingrained early on.
Yeah, for sure. And it creates this expectation that men should always be the initiators.
Right. And that leads us perfectly into our next Mr. Mr. Not Financially Set.
Ooh, this one hit home for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like he feels like he needs to have his act together financially before he can even think about pursuing a woman.
Yeah, he feels like he can't be a good provider unless he's got a certain level of financial stability.
It's like this vicious cycle, you know? Like I need to be successful to attract a partner.
Right.
But I also need a partner to feel truly successful.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is. And the article talks about how this anxiety can come from seeing their parents struggle with money.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's not just societal expectations, it's like learned behavior from their family background too.
It really adds another layer of complexity to the whole thing.
Totally. And speaking of complexity, let's talk about Mr. Doomsday.
Oh boy.
This guy is convinced that all relationships are doomed to fail.
Like he's already given up.
Yeah, he's seen too many breakups, both his own and like in his family.
Oh, so he's got some baggage.
Major baggage.
Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, right. If you only see like dysfunctional relationships or you've been burned yourself,
you start to think that lasting love is impossible.
Exactly. And it's not just personal experience. It's also like all the media we consume.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which brings us to Mr. I Hate Fairy Tales.
Interesting.
This guy feels totally overwhelmed by those unrealistic expectations that are like everywhere.
You mean like in movies and books?
Yeah, like all that romantic hype.
It sets the bar pretty high.
Way too high. He's expected to be this smooth-talking romantic hero.
Right, like straight out of a Hollywood movie.
And he just can't live up to it.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Totally. So we've got guys struggling with fear of rejection, financial insecurity, past relationship baggage, and the pressure to live up to these impossible romantic ideals.
It's no wonder some men hesitate to put themselves out there.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
For sure. So with all these anxieties swirling around, what are men actually seeking in a partner today?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
We'll have to dig a little deeper to find out.
Well, that's where our second source comes in.
Okay.
This YouTube interview with a relationship expert, Louise Perry.
Oh yeah, I've heard of her.
She has this really fascinating theory that kind of like flips the script on how we view modern dating.
Oh, yeah, I'm listening.
So Perry argues that this whole idea of, you know, approaching strangers in bars.
Like a classic pickup scene.
Right, exactly. That was actually a blip in history, not the norm.
Really?
Yeah, she says, for most of human history, relationships were formed within existing communities.
Interesting.
And they were more about like practical partnerships than finding your soulmate based on, you know, like romantic love.
That makes sense when you think about it.
Right. Like if we're actually wired for more community-based connections, then maybe apps and bars are the totally wrong places to be looking for love.
It's like we're trying to force something that goes against our nature.
Exactly. And Perry makes this distinction between what she calls a confluent view of relationships
Comslewian.
Yeah, where it's about like mutual benefit and growth.
Okay.
Versus a romantic view where it's all about finding your other half.
Right, yeah.
And experiencing this like grand passion.
So like two totally different approaches.
Yeah, and it seems like today we're caught somewhere in between.
Like we want both.
Exactly. We're told to expect both the fireworks and the practicality.
The soulmate connection. A&E personal growth.
It's a tall order.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And then you add in all the miscommunication between men and women.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't help.
And it's no wonder things get so complicated.
It's a recipe for disaster.
So Perry actually uses this term socially retarded.
Oh, wow.
To describe how men often miss the subtle signals that women send.
Okay, so they're not picking up on the hints.
Not at all. She says they're so worried about rejection that they become like hyper-focused on avoiding it.
Makes sense.
And they totally miss those like smaller signs of interest.
So they're blinded by their fear.
Basically, and get this, it gets even more confusing.
How so?
Because Perry says men tend to overperceive interest.
Oh, really?
While women underperceive it.
Wow, so it's like a double whammy.
It is. She thinks this explains a lot of those awkward workplace situations.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
And even contributes to the whole Me Too movement.
Because signals are getting crossed left and right.
It's like we're speaking totally different languages.
And then you throw alcohol into the mix.
Oh, yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
It definitely doesn't help things.
So let's bring this all back to you, the listener.
Right.
We've explored like all these anxieties that men face.
Yeah.
Societal pressures, communication breakdowns, the clash between like how we're wired and how we're actually dating.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is.
But I think it's important to remember that these are just a few perspectives.
Right.
It's like a snapshot of a much bigger picture.
So as we wrap up, I'm left with this one like thought-provoking question.
What?
If we're really wired for more community-based connections,
yeah,
are apps and bars like the totally wrong places to be looking for love? What if instead of swiping right or like trying to pick someone up at a noisy bar,
we focused on building relationships within our communities?
Right, like where we already are.
It's a different way of thinking about it.
It sounds almost utopian.
Maybe.
But I think it's a vision worth striving for.
I agree.
So listener, as you go about your day, I want to encourage you to think about like your own experiences.
Yeah.
Do you see these patterns playing out in your own life?
It's worth reflecting on.
It is. And if so, what steps can you take to like create more meaningful connections?
Whether you're looking for romance or just want to, expand your social circle.
Exactly. The answers might surprise you.